This particular video is dedicated to one of our most dedicated commenters. In the harsh winter of 1915, 400,000 Serbians attempted to retreat across the mountains of Albania and Montenegro. What would occur would be Serbia's greatest national tragedy, the Albanian Golgotha. Hundreds of thousands of people died in the harshest of conditions. In today's video, we will cover the horrors of the Great Retreat. It's perhaps helpful to start with the beginning of the First World War, triggered by the assassination of Austro-Hungarian Archduke Ferdinand by a group of Bosnian Serbs. The assassination was motivated by nationalism and a desire to free Bosnia and Herzegovina from Austro-Hungarian rule. Now, the death of Archduke Ferdinand is seen as triggering the First World War, with the Austro-Hungarian Empire declaring war on the Kingdom of Serbia, who they blamed for the murder. With this initial conflict, the web of treaties and alliances between the two countries brought other countries into the war. The First World War was largely fought between the Triple Entente and the Central Powers. Serbia was allied with the Triple Entente of Britain, Russia and France. Austria-Hungary was allied with the Central Powers of Germany, the Ottoman Empire, and later Bulgaria. The web of allies plunged the continent into total war, but Serbia would play host to the first battles of the conflict. In July of 1914, the Austro-Hungarian army invaded Serbia. The Serbian army had recently fought and won two conflicts against the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria, meaning that they were somewhat battle-hardened and benefiting from high morale. However, they were also a little war-weary. By December that year, the Serbian army had repelled the Austro-Hungarian invasion of the country, and in the face of their defeats, the Austro-Hungarian army carried out a number of war crimes. Concentration camps, such as Velika Meda, held tens of thousands of Serbian civilians and prisoners of war. As many as 6,000 people died in this camp alone. Entire villages were destroyed, as scorched earth policies were employed to destroy farmland, wells and animals. All the while, refugees fleeing the carnage were targeted in random violent attacks. When the Central Powers of Austria-Hungary and Germany united to invade Serbia in 1915, the Serbian army fared far worse than their successful first year. To make matters even worse, the Bulgarian army in October of 1915 launched its invasion of Serbia without a declaration of war. In all, over 500,000 soldiers descended onto the Serbian forces. Attacked from the north and from the east, the Serbian army was forced to retreat to Kosovo. From there, the battered Serbian army attempted to stage a counterattack, but by November, the capital had fell to the Central Powers, and the Serbian army was broken. To make matters even worse, a typhus epidemic ravaged Serbia. At the start of the First World War, Serbia had a population of around 3 million people. In just a few months, 500,000 Serbians were infected with typhus, 1/6 of the population. Of these, 200,000 would die, including 70,000 Serbian soldiers. In the whole of Serbia, there were only around 400 doctors. They attempted to combat the disease, with almost all of them contracting the disease too. In all, 126 Serbian doctors died while attempting to combat the typhus epidemic. When considering their options, the Serbian command had little choice. To stay and fight would mean the encirclement and destruction of their armed forces. The Serbian government refused to surrender. With the targeting of civilians, the bombing of refugees, and the crimes committed during the war led Serbians to fear their utter destruction. On the 25th of November 1915, the order was given for a retreat along a route where the enemy could not follow, but the route would be deadly. An arduous trek over the mountains of Albania and Montenegro, appropriately named the Accursed Mountains. There was no real infrastructure across these mountains, no railways, and little in the way of roads. But it wouldn't just be the remainder of the Serbian army who were making this journey, which was around 250,000 on its own. The Serbian royal family, the government, and thousands of wounded soldiers would also be making the difficult journey over the mountainous terrain during the heart of winter. As many as 220,000 civilians accompanied the Serbian army, either as refugees fleeing atrocities or families of the soldiers. Of these, 36,000 boys aged between 12 and 18 would be joining them. These children and young adults were deemed vital as future recruits for the Serbian army, perhaps highlighting the desperation of the Serbian forces. In addition, tens of thousands of Hungarian prisoners of war too would be dragged along for the difficult journey. The army was split into three. The first was the central column, heading west through Albania's mountainous region, and this was the shortest of the routes taken. This comprised of the Serbian government, taking with them documents, gold, currency reserves, and items of cultural significance. The 70-year-old King Peter I joined them, something that would boost morale. The second would be the southern column through Albania. The Prime Minister of Albania promised protection to the Serbs travelling through the southern route, offering food and shelter where possible. The final column would take the northern route through Montenegro and assist Montenegro against its own invasion by the Central Powers Army. This column would contain the most Serbian troops, and would aim to meet up with the other two columns and continue moving south after. Regardless of which route was taken, the soldiers and refugees had to endure the harsh winter, which had come early. Many of the mountain trails and paths had become blocked by deep snow. Terrible storms had raged along the mountainside. Along the paths, it would be very common to see the young and the old lying where they had fallen due to exhaustion or starvation. As carts were pulled through the mountains, they churned the ground into a muddy quagmire, making travel even harder. One witness to the retreat was the American journalist William G. Shepard, who described the following. They say that nearly the whole route is lined with corpses of human beings and the carcasses of horses and mules dead with starvation, while thousands of old men, women and children are lying on the rocks and in the thickets beside the trail, exhausted and foodless, awaiting the end. Some elements of the Serbian army only had a week's worth of rations left when they set off. Starvation would be a major problem for the retreating Serbs. There are even accounts of soldiers resorting to cooking their leather belts in a bid to make something resembling food. As food became ever more scarce, desperate refugees would exchange whatever possessions they had for scraps. Another witness to the desperation was a French medical officer named Major Louis L. Thompson. He described scenes where men desperate with hunger resorted to ripping the flesh from dead horses left by the roadside. For those travelling the central route, it would not just be the cold or starvation that would claim lives. Albanian tribes would launch attacks against the retreating Serbians. During the First Balkan War, the Serbian army seized large parts of Albania from Ottoman control. During the occupation of these territories, Serbian soldiers gained a grim reputation for their heavy-handed rule and the massacres of civilians. These Albanian tribes sought retribution and attacked the Serbian refugees. Many of these Albanian tribes received support from the Central Powers, but for many, banditry against the Serbs was a means of survival during the harsh winters. During the retreat, hundreds were killed by Albanian militias and bandits, with many more doomed to die after losing their supplies. Eventually, the Serbians did reach the coast, but when they did, they attempted to take account of the dead. And when they did, it was clear that this retreat was a total disaster. Of the estimated 220,000 civilians who departed, only 60,000 managed to reach the coast. Of these, 36,000 boys aged between 12 and 18 would be joining them, and only 7,000 survived to reach the coast. Only 120,000 soldiers survived. Around 70,000 soldiers died during the retreat, with a further 70,000 missing. It's hard to know for sure just how many people died, as record-keeping was not entirely accurate during this chaotic time, but anywhere from 350 to 400,000 people died during the Great Retreat. But even when reaching the safety of the coast, it would not mean the end of death and suffering. Many of the Allied ships, filled with vital supplies and food, struggled to make port in the shallow waters. Many who survived the march were past the point of saving, and they died when they reached apparent safety. The bulk of the Serbian army and refugees was shipped to the island of Corfu, but most of the surviving soldiers arrived emaciated, frostbitten, and sick from typhus, dysentery and starvation. Many passed away in chaotic camps that were ill-equipped to deal with a large number of ill and dying. There, the survivors relayed their harrowing stories to the Red Cross staff. Those deemed to be too ill were instead sent to the island of Vidu, dubbed the Island of Death. Thousands died, to the point Where the rocky terrain of Vidu offered no more graves, many Serbian soldiers were buried at sea instead. The surviving soldiers were given new uniforms and weapons, reorganized and resupplied by the United States and Russia. It was rebuilt into 4 divisions. For many people, the fact that the Serbian army persisted represented the hope that Serbia would be liberated from Bulgarian occupation. From Corfu, the reformed Serbian army was shipped to Macedonia to fight. That was until September 1918, when the Serbian forces spearheaded a major offensive to break the Bulgarian and German lines to recapture Serbia, finally liberating the country. The Great March remains the worst tragedy that has affected the Serbian people. It is one of the less well-known events of the First World War, perhaps overshadowed by the horrors of trench warfare. But it's vital to remember all of those who suffered during the war, and remember the horrors of the Albanian Golgotha.